Welcome folks, my name is Tom Beatty. I'm the chair of the Web Design and Development program at Newmont College of Computer Science, and today we're going to do some JavaScript programming. Okay folks, in the last video we talked about variables. Today we're going to talk about arrays. I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call it arrays, and I guess let's tidy things up a little bit. We'll create a variables folder and put what we worked on last time in there, and we'll make our arrays folder the new place that will hold what we do today. So let me go back to VS Code, and I've got my folders now. Let's work in arrays. Let me close that welcome screen. So I'm going to once again need two files. I need an index.html and I need a script.js. Eventually I'm going to assume that you've already created this stuff, but since this is only the second video, let's go through it again. And I can do an exclamation point enter in VS Code and it will write the basics of an HTML file for me. And then I can do script src equals script.js. I close it, it creates my close tag, and we're off and running. Let's go to our script.js and we'll create an array. And an array is created, it's an object, it's created the same way that you would create a string or a number, a boolean. And so I'm just going to say let, and we'll call it my array, equals, and I can just put an open and close square brackets there, and that is an empty array there. It has nothing in it. And an array basically is, in other languages, it's a sequential section of memory where you can store lots of the same object and you have to predefine the size of it. JavaScript arrays are a bit more flexible. Think of it as a series of containers. Each one has its own address starting at 0 and counting up from there. But you can put any sort of object or object-like thing in each one of these containers in an array. So the first element of an array can be a number, the second one could be a string, the third one could be a boolean, the fourth one could actually be another array. And so let's play with this a little bit. And there are different ways to add to an array. So I'm going to say my first element is going to be Bob, and I separate elements with a comma. And this is called creating an array through an array literal. It's the most common way of setting up an array. So I've got a string as my first element, and let's put the number 5 next, and maybe a boolean, false. And I'm just putting random things in here. It doesn't really matter what you put in. And let's put in red. There we go. So we've got a few items in our array here, and I can console log an array just like I was console logging other variables. And I save that. And let's see, inside arrays, double click my index.html. Nothing shows up on the screen because again we're putting it in the console, so F12 and make sure your console is selected here. And sure enough, this says array 4. It's saying it's an array that has 4 elements in it, which is what we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's come on back and take a look at our array. And if I click this little arrow, it will open it up and show me the elements in the array. And so element at the address of 0 is Bob, 1 is 5, 2 is false, 3 is red. And if I want to just access one element, instead of console logging my array, I could just put in some square brackets here and say which element I want to put on the screen. So I'm going to say 1. And some of you might think, oh, that's going to put Bob on the screen. But remember, arrays start counting at 0. So that's going to put 5 on the screen. So I save that. And when I console log my array sub1, as it's sometimes referred to as, it gives me a 5. If I wanted Bob, I put 0 in there. And that would give me Bob. Or if I wanted red, that would be 3. And there we go. Now, I can add to my array if I want to. There are several ways that you can do that. An easy way is I can say my array dot push, and that will add whatever I put in these parentheses as an element at the end of the array. So I could say Sally. I save that. I refresh. Oh, so I'm still just console logging 3, which is still red. If I were to move that console log down here, it's still going to say red because, again, that's what's at address 3. If I show the entire array, though, let me get rid of those brackets in the 3, you'll see that Sally has now been added to the array. Bob 5, false, red, and Sally. And you can get rid of something at the end of the array, if you want to, by using pop. And it will remove the last element in an array. So let me go ahead and console log the array again after we pop. And you'll see, first it shows the array. It's added Sally in there. Now you'll notice when I open it up, Sally's gone. I look here and it's the same way. That has to do with how console log works. It actually, when it runs through on the browser, it actually will make changes to the array and you don't see it until later. So even though this is saying 5, when I open it up, this is actually showing the current state after the program has been run. So Sally's already gone. But when I've got them minimized, you can see, oh look, Sally's been added, and then we used pop and it got rid of Sally. And I can also add something to the beginning of an array. Maybe we'll move Sally to the front of the array, and this will replace the first element and move everything else back. So let's try this here. So Sally's position is actually going to be at 0 now. So there's Sally, Sally, Bob, and all the others move down. So Bob is now in element 1, element address 1, 5 is at 2, so everything has been shifted. I realize they call it unshift. That seems a little unusual, especially since to get rid of the first element of an array, you use shift, and it actually, I guess, shifts it all forward. And so if I do my array again, you will see Sally, where the first element has been removed. And so what you might wonder then at this point is, how can I go in and remove things from the middle of an array or at any location? And let me show you how that can be done. You use splice. Splice is kind of magical. It can do a lot of different things. For now, I'm just going to use it to remove part of my array. And I'll talk about this in more detail later in a future video, but Splice is really powerful. And I can say, I can pick a particular element by its address and then remove that element or remove several elements. So I've got my array, Splice, and let's see, this is our current array. We've got Bob, 5, false, and red. Maybe I want to remove the false. So the false is at address 2. So I'm going to say let's start at 2, and we're going to remove one element from there. And so then I can console log my array, and let's see what I end up with. False is now gone. And with Splice, I could get rid of more items. So instead of starting at element 2, I'm going to start at element 1, and I'm going to get rid of 2 elements starting at address 1. So that would get rid of the 5 and the false. And sure enough, it leaves me with Bob and red. So we have an array. It holds lots of different things. We can push things, which adds to the end. It'll add elements to the end of an array. We can pop things, which removes the last element from an array. We can shift, which will add to the first. It will become the first element of the array and push everything back. Unshift, and then shift will get rid of the first element of an array, or the element at position index 0. So, and then we have Splice, where you can choose based on the index and remove however many elements you want. Let me show you one more thing too. So we've got Splice. I can also, if I comment this out, and I can comment by doing Control/, or you can put double slashes in front of each line. Commented code doesn't actually run, and so you can use that to keep notes or to keep code from running that you don't want to delete. And if I save that, run it again, I've still got Bob, 5, false, and red. And I can say, let's do let new array equals my r splice 1, 2 console.log new r. And you might think, well, isn't that just going to be the same thing that we had before, where it would show us Bob and red? But it's not. Let's refresh and see. Instead, what we've done is that new array now equals what we removed. And so you can use Splice to actually return whatever it is you're chopping out of there. Now, if I go ahead and console.log my array, you'll notice that's Bob and red. So that one still did get pieces sliced out of it. Those 2 elements, 5 and false, got sliced out of it, or spliced out of it. But then I've also created a new array that contains what I removed. And it really makes Splice incredibly powerful. Okay, that's a good start for arrays. Next video, we'll talk about JavaScript objects. Alright, if you like this video, please hit subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. I will provide more content in the future and keep it entertaining for you. Thanks a lot.